Everybody, welcome back to another episode of Shifty's 49ers Talk. In today's video, we are previewing a game. It's been so long, but we are previewing the preseason Week 1 matchup between the San Francisco 49ers and the Green Bay Packers. This game will be played on Friday at Levi's Stadium, Friday at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time. Now, with this video, what I want to do is really delve into what my expectations are for the game in terms of players on the offense, the defense, and of course the special teams, which I think this is really important for the special teams, these three games, as we have a new coordinator and a bunch of new players added to that part of the game. So let's not waste any time, guys. Let's jump right in. One of the first things that I do want to say is that in this game, quarterback Aaron Rodgers for the Green Bay Packers will not be playing. He's been around the league since 2005, so he really has no need to play in a preseason game, so that was not a surprise by any means. But for the 49ers, some of the guys who will be out for this game, starting defensive tackle Eric Armstead will most likely not be there, as will Tarvarius Moore, who picked up a muscle strain, so he will not be playing in this game, and maybe not the game after, which, although it's a bit of a bummer because you'd like to get these guys, some game time and even, preseason, but ultimately being ready for the regular season is the way to go for these. So those are just some of the key names that will be out for this game. But now let's jump into the expectations and what we're going to look for from the offense side of the ball in preseason Week 1. Of course, when it comes to the offense, we have to talk about Trey Lance, the quarterback position, the most important position in football, possibly sports. So one of the things here, I'm looking for Trey Lance to maybe play the entire first quarter, not the first half, but the first quarter. In Week 2, the next preseason game, I wouldn't be surprised if he plays maybe a quarter and a half. And then Week 3, I don't know if he'll play at all, but we definitely want to get him some meaningful snaps before the regular season, because if there's one thing that Trey Lance needs, is that he needs reps. So what are some of the things that I'm going to be looking for from Trey Lance? Well, number one is going to be accuracy. It sounds like it's been a little bit spotty in training camp practices, so I'm looking to see him just be accurate with the ball, hitting receivers in stride and hitting them where only the receivers have a chance to make it. But not only that, just short dump-off plays, even if it's a screen pass to a running back or a quick pass to a tight end or a receiver. I just want to see him be on the money, and I'm really excited to see that faster release that he has right now as well. But the other things, just beyond in terms of like accuracy and whatnot, that I think to me are really important is just really getting plays called in time, getting to the line of scrimmage, being able to see what defense is in front of him, if he might need to make any adjustments from there, but also getting guys lined up correctly too. That's one of the big things, for young quarterbacks, and especially ones in a Shanahan type offense where we just have so much, pre-snap motion, that getting guys lined up in time so they can be set for the play, I think is going to be really, really big. So I'm, of course, looking for that. But, other things too that we have to really take a look at. I really hope that Trey Lance takes some chances in the passing game. I want to see, some risky throws. I want to see deep passes, things of that nature, without giving away too much of the playbook necessarily, but take those chances, because the results don't matter for these games. Like what the final score is really doesn't matter. We could talk all day long about like preseason scores. Let's put it this way. I remember basically every score from the regular season last year. I don't remember the final scores in any of the preseason games last year because it doesn't matter. So with Trey Lance, though, take chances in the passing game. If you throw interceptions, that's what we can correct him in practice for. But after that, one thing which I don't want him to take chances with is in the running game. If he's going to run, he needs to slide. He needs to get out of bounds. He cannot take any big hits. That's not only for preseason, but just in general going forward. We need him out there. There's no question about that. One of the big knocks that I've had on Trey Lance is that he just takes too many big hits. So can't have that. That also means the offensive line holding up as well. Moving on from there, some of the really interesting things that I'll be looking for in this game, of course, who's going to be the backup quarterback, Sudfeld or Purdy? Who's going to look better? Really excited to see about that. Also, the running backs. I'm really curious to see how that shakes out. I think Elijah Mitchell is our running back number one, but, we're going to look to spread the load a little bit more. Seemingly, Trey Sermon's looked really good in practice, so I'm excited to see him if he looks more explosive, looks more confident running with the ball. Rookie Tyrion Davis-Price, Jordan Mason, I'm really excited to see how these guys are developing and coming along so far. So to see how the running back competition shakes out, you never know how it can go with Kyle Shanahan. We've seen guys like Matt Breida have huge success with the 49ers. Even last year, Elijah Mitchell. People barely knew the name. They were like, oh, he's a 6th round running back, and now he's our running back number one. So you just never know how it's going to turn out. Beyond that, I'm really excited to see how a tight end, who's going to be there behind George Kittle. My guess is we'll probably see quite a bit of Tyler Kroft. I think Charlie Warner's still out with injury, so some of the other guys there really need to step up. Can Ross Dwelly improve his blocking, for example? What do we have in Choi Fumagalli, who we signed? Tanner Hudson has had moments in training camp, so a lot of really interesting things there. Wide receivers, we know what Debo can do. We know what Ayuk can do. Probably won't see too much of them, but just guys like Jawan Jennings, Ray, how's that chemistry going with Trey Lance? Danny Gray, the rookie, I'd like to see him maybe 1 or 2 plays at least designed for him where he just goes deep and see if Trey Lance can bomb it to him down the field. A lot of really interesting moving parts there. And then the really big thing is the offensive line. So some of the guys we have to look at, especially on the interior of the offensive line. Now, I'm not really sure who Green Bay will be playing on their defense, but they have a talented defensive line. So it will be good for guys like Aaron Banks and Spencer Burford to really go up against NFL quality NFL guys on the defensive line. How are our centers looking? Jake Brendel, Daniel Brunskill, who's going to look better there? And then maybe, and it sounds like Shanahan said McGlinchey will play a little bit on Friday night. So just seeing how he looks coming back from that injury is going to be massive. That's it for the offense. Ultimately, look, in a perfect world, we moved the ball up and down the field. We put up a whole bunch of points on Green Bay. But really, I think some of the more intangible things are going to be a little bit more important, especially with regards to Trey Lance. Does he get the calls played in time? Does he get everyone set up correctly? And is he really setting the team up for success? We're putting the franchise essentially in his hands, so I'm really excited to see how it turns out. Next up on the defensive side of the ball. So typically in preseason, when it comes to defenses, they play a much more vanilla style defense, not really going to be giving away too many blitz packages, things like that. But that doesn't mean that there's not a lot to see here. So the defensive line, huge battles all across the defensive line. Number one, very curious to see Javon Kinlaw out there. How much will he play? Of course, coming back from an injury, by all accounts, he's been looking great in training camp, in fantastic shape. So I'd like to see him out there maybe for the first quarter. After that, just the depth at defensive tackle is just crazy. The depth at edge is even crazier. So seeing how guys like Omenahu, how they're developing. New guys, rookie Drake Jackson, Kimoko Toure as we signed as a free agent. So how are these guys looking so far in this scheme? Again, there's not going to be any exotic blitz packages, but just to see, if they're winning their one-on-one matchups, things of that nature. Really curious to see how it breaks down in terms of snap counts for these guys. Who gets to run with the starting defenders, things like that. Now, when we move on to the linebackers, I really don't think we're going to see very much of Fred Warner, probably not too much either of Dre Greenlaw and Aziz. At most, I think they play the first quarter, but we'll see how that goes. But some of the depth pieces too, who we may have to rely on later in the year. So Oren Burks, how has he been looking so far with the linebackers? Demetrius Flanagan-Foles, someone who we could rely on for depth as the season goes on. So with linebackers in the front seven, it's really going to be about depth. I think for the most part, our starters are solidified, but really curious to see the breakdown in snaps and who plays with the 1s, 2s, and 3s and things like that. As we talk about the secondary, now this is going to be a really big one here because the secondary last year, especially at cornerback, was a huge issue for the 49ers. I did mention earlier, Tarvarius Ward not going to be out there. Emmanuel Mosley, I think maybe out there a little bit, but some of the other new pieces and some of the guys who've only been here for a year, how are they developing? So, guys, I'm really curious to see. Last year's draft picks, Ambry Thomas, Diamador Lenore. This year's rookies, Tariq Castro-Fields, Samuel Womack. Then other guys like Darqueze Dennard, he's had a little bit more time with the team. Apparently he came in and essentially learned the whole playbook in a day or two, but just to have more time with like chemistry and whatnot and things like that, it's going to be really interesting to see. We're probably not going to see any of Jason Verrett, and honestly wouldn't even want him out there if he was healthy just because of his health concerns. But overall, it's going to be really cool to see how, like, again, similar to the front seven, how the snaps break down, just how these guys look. Last year in preseason, the thing that I do remember is Lenore looking pretty good. He had an interception. Ambry Thomas didn't look so great, but Ambry Thomas came along as the season went along. So just really excited to see the depth that we have at cornerback. Then of course, we have like Dante Johnson as well. We just signed Ken Crawley too. So see how some of these guys are performing. Always a good thing to see the depth at cornerback. Now, as we move on to safety. So Jimmy Ward, I think he'll play maybe a little bit, maybe a drive or two on defense, and that's probably about it. But maybe Tarvarius Moore. Let's see how he looks after coming back from his injury. At strong safety, I wouldn't be surprised to see Hufanga out there for the first quarter, maybe a little bit longer. But not only that, George Odum, so a free agent we brought in, how's he looking out there? Could we see guys like Dante Johnson play at safety a little bit? Get them some reps, like some kind of game time reps at that position, just in case our depth gets tested throughout the year. That'll be curious to see as well. But ultimately, I'm definitely looking for a much more improved secondary this season for the 49ers, and it really does start against a team like the Green Bay, who have a good offensive system right there with Matt LaFleur, and really curious to see what kind of pressure and what we can do to Jordan Love to make him feel uncomfortable in the pocket as well. Last but not least, the special teams. So some of the things that I'm looking for out of the special teams: kick coverage, punt coverage. I really do want to see a massive improvement in both of those areas. But not only that, in terms of just kickoffs, I want to see Wishnowsky or Gold or whoever is going to be doing it. I just want to see them booting it right through the end zone. Well, maybe not, actually. Now, let me retract what I just said, because here's the thing. That's not always going to happen in games, so perhaps we do want to test our kick coverage. How do guys like George Odum and Oren Burks and these guys who we brought in, are they making a significant impact in terms of that? One of the things that we could really do and improve on is just being able to set our defense up with better field positions. So, for example, if we kick it off, giving our guys get down there, stop them at the 20, inside the 20-yard line, it's a huge benefit for the defense compared to last year, where seemingly every time the opposing offense was starting at the 30, the 35-yard line. So curious to see. And also Brian Schneider, the new special teams coordinator, does he try anything a little bit different just for testing in the preseason? Perhaps a fake punt, an onside kick out of nowhere, things like that. Just kind of curious to see if they'll have any wrinkles thrown in there, but also the return game as well. So Ray McCloud, I think, is somewhat penciled in as our starter, but just seeing other guys back there, who else could be back there? I heard Ayuk's been back there a little bit with returns. I'd really rather not that be the case, just because he's so important for the offense. But seeing if our kick returning and punt returning, is that improving so far under Brian Schneider? So a lot of little things to look into. And special teams, just ask the Green Bay Packers how important special teams are. That essentially lost them the playoff game against the 49ers. So it's really a big aspect that I'm going to be focusing a little bit more on when it comes to the preseason games. Now, basically, guys, when it comes to my expectations, I'm going to leave it there. Ultimately, offense, efficiency, get the play called in time, be a little bit consistent, see how the pass blocking and run blocking is. Defensively, the depth. How is the depth looking, especially in defensive line? The rotations, who's playing where, who's playing what positions and how much. Secondary, I want to see a lot better coverage, and also I want to see a decrease in defensive pass interference calls. That's for sure. Special teams, are we seeing an improvement right there? Overall, though, guys, we can't worry about the results, and if we're trying different plays, we have to try not to stress out about, if there's an interception here or there or what have you. It's just preseason. In 2 months' time, we're going to forget all about these games. But these games are also important for the development of the team as we head into the regular season. Now, I also mentioned earlier that I will not be streaming this game, and I don't think I'll be able to stream any of the preseason games, unfortunately. But when it comes to the regular season, you know I'm going to be right here reacting play-by-play to the games, and I really, really can't wait because that's my favorite part when it comes to this channel, and I'm so stoked that football is, a month away, so in terms of regular season, so it's going to be a really good time. But yeah, let me know, guys, your thoughts and comments in the comment section. Let me know what you think about what you expect from the team in the preseason, some players that you're really excited for. If I had to name 5 guys that I'm really looking at in terms of preseason week 1, of course, we have Trey Lance. I'm going to be looking at, on the offensive side of the ball, Spencer Burford, Aaron Banks, and then defensively, I'm going to be talking about some of the newcomers, Drake Jackson, the rookie, so that's number 4, and then finally number 5 in the secondary. Let's see how Talanoa Hufanga is doing in that strong safety role. I'm going to leave it there, guys. You know I'm going to say 2 things, the butt counts, and I'm going to catch y'all on the flip side.